Warhammer 40,000 was created to imagine the darkest possible future, a universe where hope is an extinct species and survival itself is an act of defiance. Born from the grim idea that humanity forever stands on the edge of annihilation, Warhammer 40K forged a setting where gods are nightmares, heroes are monsters, and the cosmos is a machine endlessly grinding toward destruction. It is a universe drenched in blood, built on sacrifice, and fueled by the eternal truth that in the far future there is nothing but war. Worlds die to keep humanity alive for one more day. Armies of zealots and titans clash in fire and madness. Even the gods of chaos themselves hunger endlessly for domination. And in this suffocating darkness, the will of the Emperor of mankind is the only fragile spark that keeps humanity from collapsing into the jaws of the warp. Into this brutal reality, Wanda Maximoff, known to the multiverse as the Scarlet, which was never meant to arrive. Yet fate, both cruel and curious, tore a rift between dimensions and hurled her into this nightmare of iron, faith, and eternal war. It began with a storm, one of raw emotion and unstable power. Wanda had felt the breaking point long before the world around her shattered. Her thoughts had been spiraling, her grief cracking open familiar wounds, her power rising like a tide that refused to retreat. She had tried to contain it, she had tried to fight the storm within her mind, but magic like hers did not obey. It only reflected the chaos she carried inside. The moment she lost control, reality itself buckled. Red light consumed everything, roaring like a cosmic hurricane as she tore through the fabric of existence. Then, without warning, the storm ended. Silence fell. The world she knew was gone, replaced by something far heavier, darker, and crueler. She felt it before she saw it, the oppression in the air, the agony in the psychic currents, the stench of suffering soaked into the ground. When Wanda opened her eyes, she knelt on cracked stone beneath a sky, bruised by smoke and fire. The taste of ash coated the air. And then the whispers came, not whispers she created, not visions born of trauma or guilt. These voices felt ancient and hungry, scraping across the edges of her consciousness like claws against steel. The warp pressed on her mind with an intensity she had never felt. It was alive, it was aware, and it was fascinated by her. Wanda gasped and staggered to her feet, clutching her temples as the voices swarmed around her. Heresy, new power, taint her, claim her, devour her. A goddess of chaos is born. She forced back a scream, her powers flickering around her as she tried to silence the psychic intrusion. She had battled cosmic threats, rewritten realities, and fought titans of unimaginable strength, but nothing had prepared her for the presence of the warp. In this universe, thoughts had weight, fear had form, and emotion itself could bleed into monstrosities. For a moment she wondered if she had shattered her mind, but no, something far worse was real. The sound of boots striking the earth jolted her from the psychic assault. Wanda turned quickly, instinctively raising her hands as a squad of soldiers approached. They wore drab fatigues and battered armor, marked with symbols she did not recognize, yet their fear was unmistakable. Their rifles trembled, but their eyes held the desperate resolve of men who had seen their world fall too many times. She could feel their terror not just of her, but of anything that emerged from a warped tier. The Imperium taught its children one truth: anything that came from the warp was an enemy. "You will remain where you are," one of them barked, voice shaking. "Identify yourself." Wanda took a step back. "I don't want to fight. I just want to know where I am," the commander shouted. "Open fire." The lasguns erupted in bursts of red light. Instinct, not malice, guided her response. Chaos magic swirled around her hands in streaks of scarlet, twisting reality in subtle patterns that bent probability to her will. The shots dissolved inches from her body, burning away into harmless motes of light. The soldiers froze mid-stride, stunned by the impossibility of what they were witnessing. "I'm not your enemy," Wanda pleaded. "Please stop." But the Imperium was not a place where mercy survived. Another soldier switched to full auto, eyes wide with terror. The stream of energy bolts ripped forward. Wanda flicked her wrist. Reality folded like fabric. The soldier found himself firing not at her, but at mirror images of his own squad. Confusion exploded. Shouts filled the air. Men stumbled back, shouting that they were under attack. Wanda winced as panic spiraled through them. She hated causing suffering, even unintentionally. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though no one could hear her. In a single pulse of crimson light, she bound them gently, warping the gravity around their bodies until they collapsed, weapons slipping from their hands as they were held safely to the ground. She did not kill them, she refused to, but before she could speak again, a voice boomed across the battlefield, deep, amplified, and dripping with unwavering judgment. Heresy detected, ready for purification. A massive shadow descended from a gunship above. Wanda stepped back instinctively as the ground shook beneath a massive impact. Dust rose, metal groaned, and from within the cloud emerged a towering figure encased in heavy ceramite armor, adorned with purity seals and bearing the twin-headed eagle of the Imperium. A space marine, one of the superhuman warriors forged to defend humanity through fear and fire, 8 feet tall and carved from the very idea of war. He stared at her with a ruthlessness that chilled her more deeply than the warp itself. "You wield sorcery," he declared. "You are a witch, a mutant, a threat to mankind." Wanda saw discipline in his mind iron, forged loyalty, millennia of indoctrination, but beneath that discipline she sensed something else. Fear, not fear of her as a person, but fear of what her presence represented, the warp, corruption, and the ever-present threat of chaos. In this universe, magic existed only through the warp, and anything connected to it was death. "I'm not your enemy," she insisted again. "I'm not part of the voices that live here." The Marine raised his bolter. "In this galaxy, there is no difference." He pulled the trigger. The shell screamed through the air, a massive, explosive round capable of tearing a human apart. Wanda's fingers snapped outward, glowing with red energy. The bolter round froze in place, trapped in a bubble of warped physics. It trembled violently, trying to detonate. Wanda squeezed gently. The round collapsed in her palm with the sound of crushed metal. For the first time, the Marine hesitated. That hesitation cost him. Wanda unleashed a surge of energy, not to kill, but to stop him. A crimson wave engulfed the armored giant, hurling him backward through a shattered wall. Stone exploded, dust filled the air, yet incredibly, impossibly, the Space Marine rose again, armor dented, cape torn, but resolve unbroken. "In the Emperor's name," he whispered over his vox, "what are you?" Hovering above him, Wanda felt her grief surge through her like a tidal wave. Her eyes glowed with burning red light. "I'm someone who has lost everything," she said softly, "and I will not lose myself." Her aura erupted outward. The warp around her screamed in resonance. The Marine faltered, not from physical fear, but from the overwhelming psychic pressure. Far away beyond reality itself, something stirred. The Chaos Gods felt her. Khorne savored the scent of battle leaking from her presence. Nurgle sensed the quiet rot of grief within her soul. Slaanesh trembled with delight at the intensity of her emotions. Antaeus, each architect of schemes unending, leaned forward, fascinated by the possibility of a new being shaped by chaos, yet untouched by their chains. Wanda Maximoff became a point of interest across the warp, a glowing anomaly of power that did not belong. 1,000 demonic whispers licked at her consciousness, offering salvation and damnation in the same breath. Kneel, destroy, remake reality, become our queen, be reborn in chaos. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a storm of knives. Wanda screamed, clutching her head as the warp tried to devour her magic. The world trembled beneath the force of her resistance. Thunder cracked across the sky. The ground split open in jagged lines. The air itself vibrated with unstable energies. She struggled to breathe, to fight, to remain herself. And then another voice older than empires, stronger than gods, and more powerful than all the races of mankind, cut through the warp like a golden blade. Enough. The word echoed across the immaterium, silencing demons, stopping storms, and freezing the entire planet in psychic stillness. The voice did not come from chaos. It did not whisper. It commanded. It radiated light and agony and authority beyond measure. It came from a throne on Terra. It came from a being whose mind was a beacon in the sea of nightmares. It came from the Emperor of Mankind. For the first time since she arrived, Wanda felt something other than fear. She felt recognition from a presence that saw her clearly, not as a monster, not as a weapon, but as an entity of power that did not belong. The Emperor's voice whispered again, not to the Marines, not to the warp, but directly to her. You do not belong to this galaxy. Wanda's breath caught. But now that you are here, the Emperor said, you will choose what you become. The psychic connection snapped. Wanda fell to the ground, gasping as her mind cleared of demonic voices. The Space Marine stumbled forward, unsure whether to attack or kneel, uncertain whether he had just witnessed a miracle or a heresy beyond comprehension. Wanda rose slowly, her power simmering around her like a living flame. She did not understand this world yet. She did not know its gods, its wars, or its rules. But she knew one thing. She would not be controlled. Not by chaos, not by the Imperium, not even by this Emperor who had spoken into her soul. She would survive. She would understand this place, and she would carve her own fate into a universe built to crush souls. The galaxy had no idea what had arrived. And Wanda Maximoff had no idea what awaited her. Wanda Maximoff stood amid the ruins of Cadia Secundus, breathing hard as the war light slowly faded from her eyes. The ground below her still vibrated from the force of her explosion, and pieces of shattered masonry continued tumbling from the broken wall where the Space Marine had crashed. The air smelled of scorched stone and ozone remnants of two different kinds of power colliding. She wiped a streak of ash from her cheek, grounding herself in the moment. She did not understand this world, but she understood a battlefield. She had stood in the rubble of Sokovia, on the fields of Titan, in realms where gods walked. But none of those places felt like this. This world was not merely wounded. It was dying, and it had been dying for a very, very long time. The Space Marine rose once more, his armor groaning as servos strained to lift his colossal frame. Even damaged, he seemed almost invincible. His visor stared down at her, glowing faintly through the dust. Wanda could feel the conflict in his mind, the rigid doctrine fighting the undeniable truth that she was no simple witch or sorcerer. She could sense his confusion, his fear, and the stubborn determination trying to anchor him. Stand down, Wanda said softly, though she doubted he would listen. I don't want to hurt you. His reply was slow, strained, but resolute. I do not fall. I am not defeated. I serve the Emperor. I cannot stand down. His voice cracked not with weakness, but with awe at the presence he had sensed moments earlier through the warp. The Emperor's psychic command had been felt by every psyker in the sector, including the Astartes. And although the Marine could not fully understand what he had heard, he knew that something extraordinary had occurred. Wanda approached him cautiously. Your Emperor, he spoke to me. Why? The Marine stiffened, his armored gauntlet tightening around the hilt of his chainsword. "The Emperor does not speak. Not anymore, not to anyone." His voice dropped. "If he spoke to you, it can only be for one reason." Wanda waited. "You are either chosen," his tone darkened, "or cursed." He stood fully upright now, towering over her. She did not flinch. Their powers differed, yet something in their confrontation placed them on equal ground, at least for this moment. The Marine stared into her eyes, trying to read her intentions. He found no malice, only a storm of exhaustion and confusion. Before the stalemate could break, the ground beneath them rumbled. Wanda sensed a psychic disturbance, as if a vast net had been cast across the battlefield. The warp surged in unnatural waves, and the whispers that had faded moments ago came back like a rising tide. She spun toward the horizon just as a thick plume of black smoke erupted into the air. Something massive was approaching, something steeped in psychic decay. The Space Marine's helm snapped toward the threat. A new signature, warp, corruption strong. He clenched his fist. "Chaos follows any breach. If you came through the warp, they will hunt you." Wanda swallowed hard. "Who? The servants of the ruinous powers," he said grimly. "Demons, heretic warbands, worse." His voice dropped to a growl. "You have drawn them here." Wanda felt a cold shiver crawl across her spine. She thought she had already felt the worst the warp had to offer, but something else was rising, a monstrous presence born from hatred, slaughter, and a hunger for souls. She sensed bloodlust, rage, and 1,000 howling voices chanting in primal rhythm. It was like standing in the shadow of an erupting volcano. "Is it one of those chaos beings you warned me about?" she asked. The Marine shook his head. "Not one, many." As if answering him, the horizon ignited in crimson fire. Wanda watched in disbelief as twisted shapes emerged, armored in brass, wielding axes that seethed with war, energy, their bodies wreathed in shadow and flame. They marched with the fury of a world-ending storm, chanting in guttural tones that made the air vibrate. "Khorne's warriors," the Marine said, "the blood god has sent his chosen. They sense power, your power." Wanda clenched her fists, energy sparking around her fingertips. "They want to take me. They want to destroy you or claim you." He paused, "or both." Wanda exhaled slowly, forcing her heartbeat into rhythm. She had faced armies, she had faced gods, she had torn reality apart, but these creatures did not feel like the mindless monsters she had fought before. They were something older, more primal, more horrifying, and they were getting closer. The Space Marine activated his chainsword, the teeth roaring to life with bloodthirsty hunger. "We cannot hold this ground," he said. "Not alone." Wanda looked at him sharply. "You're offering to fight with me." "I offer nothing," he said. "I obey the Emperor's will. If he truly saw you, if he truly spoke to you, then I am bound to protect you until his command is made clear." His visor turned toward her. "Do not make me regret this." Wanda almost smiled. "I won't." The first wave of Khorne berserkers charged. The ground shook under their stampeding forms, and the air filled with roars, so raw they sounded like living earthquakes. Wanda extended her hands, unleashing a torrent of red energy that twisted through the air, seizing physics and tearing it apart. She ripped the ground open beneath the berserkers' feet, swallowing them into a vortex of warped gravity. But her power, unfamiliar with the warp structure, strained under the pressure. The demons resisted, clawing their way upward with impossible fury. The Marine beside her wasted no time. He charged straight into the fray, roaring a battle cry so forceful it echoed across the ruins. His chainsword clashed against demon axes, sparks exploding like fireworks. Wanda watched the impossible strength of the Astartes as he fought, each strike breaking armor, each movement fluid despite the weight of his gear. He was a fortress in motion, a war god in mortal form, but the berserkers were endless. For every one the Marine cut down, 2 more emerged from the smoke. Wanda unleashed wave after wave of hex energy, distorting time, folding space, and rewriting gravity itself. Her magic cleaved through demons, tearing their forms into ribbons of crimson smoke. Yet more arrived, drawn by her power like moths to a star. The warp was watching, and it wanted her. A massive roar shattered the sky. A towering figure stepped from the smoke, 10 feet tall, wielding a chain, axe the size of a tree. His armor was sculpted in red brass, his helmet shaped like a snarling skull. His aura spilled bloodlust like heat from a furnace. A champion, the Marine growled, a favored of Khorne. Wanda felt her pulse spike as the creature pointed its weapon at her. Which, it bellowed, voice shaking the ground. Power. Offer it, bleed for Khorne. The Marine positioned himself between Wanda and the monster. Stay behind me, but Wanda stepped forward. No, she whispered, eyes burning. This is my fight too. The champion charged, swinging its chain, axe in a murderous arc. Wanda threw out her hand, blasting a torrent of magic toward him. He plowed through it, shrugging off attacks that would have shattered mountains. Wanda's eyes widened, but only for a moment. She summoned more power, tapping into the deepest reservoir of her being. Scarlet light erupted from her body, coiling like serpents ready to strike. The champion roared and brought his axe down. Wanda caught the weapon in midair. Reality buckled around her as crimson and warp energy collided. The champion snarled, pushing with all his monstrous strength. Wanda gritted her teeth, holding the axe inches above her face. Her aura flared brighter, and she unleashed a scream that tore through the battlefield. The axe shattered. In the same instant, Wanda exploded with raw force, disintegrating the champion in a burst of brilliant red light. The shockwave hurled demons and debris across the battlefield. For a moment, the warp itself shrieked in protest. Silence fell. The Space Marine, panting behind his helm, stared at her in disbelief. You destroyed a champion of Khorne, alone. Wanda lowered her hands, trembling from the power she had unleashed. I had too. He studied her for a long moment. There is more to you than even the Emperor saw. Wanda wasn't sure how to respond. Her heart was pounding, her mind reeling, but her resolve hardening. These creatures, these angels of death and gods of slaughter, would not take her. She would not kneel to chaos. She would not be claimed by any force in this universe. Far overhead, a psychic ripple spread across the sky, like a crack in the heavens opening wider. Wanda looked up, her eyes narrowing. The Marine followed her gaze. Another breach. Wanda felt a chill crawl through her soul. No, she whispered, something else, something bigger. The warp itself shuddered, revolving around a single, growing point of focus. The Scarlet Witch had arrived, and the galaxy was responding. Every god, every demon, every power now wanted her. And somewhere far beyond, the Emperor watched with silent, ancient interest. The sky above Cadia Secundus rippled like disturbed water. Wanda watched as the clouds twisted unnaturally, folding into shapes that had no business existing in this universe. The Marine beside her tightened his grip on his chainsword, servos whirring inside his armor. He had just witnessed a witch tear apart a champion of Khorne, and yet the look in his posture was not triumph but dread. Something else was coming, something far worse. Wanda felt it too, not as a sound, not as a vision, but as a pressure directly inside her mind, squeezing like an invisible hand. It was the warp, reshaping itself, adjusting the weight of its gaze. It had seen her power, it had recognized her presence, and now it was no longer merely curious, it was interested. The Marine lifted his head as a flare of psychic light streaked across the sky. A new tier, he muttered. Another incursion. His voice darkened. The ruinous powers will not let a being like you go unchallenged. Wanda didn't respond immediately. She was still attuned to the invisible storm swirling above them. The warp screamed with emotion, but it was not a scream of agony. "It was hunger," she whispered. "They're watching me." The Marine turned slightly. "The Chaos Gods, all of them," Wanda replied. "Their voices, they're louder now." As she spoke, a sensation like burning ice crawled up her spine. She felt the distinct, terrible awareness of 4 colossal entities pressing against her perception. 4 titanic powers, each vast enough to drown universes, now focused on a single question: what is the Scarlet Witch? The answer, she realized, mattered more to this galaxy than she could possibly understand. The air trembled as another psychic pulse surged across the sky. Wanda instinctively looked upward. Through the swirling clouds, brief silhouettes flickered, winged shapes, horned shapes, things with too many limbs and too many eyes. They pressed against the barrier between realms, eager to bleed into reality. Wanda felt the Marine tense beside her. He sensed it too. "What are they?" she asked quietly. "Demons," he said, manifesting through the warp. His tone turned grim. "They're converging on us." Wanda swallowed hard. She had faced horrors before. She had fought nightmares. She had even created them. But this was different. The warp wasn't merely a threat. It was a predator. And it had spent millennia honing its hunger. The ground suddenly cracked open. Light, violent, unnatural, and crimson burst from beneath the soil. It tore through the earth like a blade, ripping open a gash that bled raw war energy. Wanda shielded her eyes as gusts of psychic wind lashed out, flinging debris in every direction. The Marine braced himself, armor locking into defensive posture. Another breach, which, stand back. But Wanda didn't move. Her instincts screamed to run, to hide, to shield herself from the storm of hatred rising beneath her feet. But she had run before during Sokovia, during Westview, during every moment when grief choked her heart. Not anymore, not here, not again. She planted her feet and summoned her power. Scarlet energy swirled around her hands, forming spirals of light. The air crackled, the warp challenged her, and she challenged it back. A shriek pierced the battlefield as the tear widened. A swirling vortex of blood. Colored mist erupted upward. From within, it emerged creatures shaped in the image of nightmare's demons with elongated limbs, razor-tipped claws, and faces sculpted to embody suffering itself. Their mouths opened with gaping hunger as they spilled into reality, dozens at a time. Wanda exhaled sharply. "Another army," the Marine stepped forward, "and this will not be the last." The demons charged. Their roars were a blend of hatred and ecstasy, echoing with the twisted joy of violence. Wanda reacted instantly. With a flick of her wrist, she swept out an arc of hex energy. Reality bent like molten metal. Half the charging demons were hurled backward, colliding with invisible fields of pressure before dissolving into smoke. But the others surged forward, and they were fast, too fast. Wanda barely had time to raise her hands as 3 leapt at her simultaneously. She unleashed a pulse of scarlet light that shredded their bodies mid-air. Their forms disintegrated, but the energy of their death screamed inside her skull, like feedback from a broken psychic speaker. She staggered. The Marine smashed into the remaining demons with the fury of a living tank. His chainsword tore through them, sending showers of warped ichor across the battlefield. Each strike was a roar of defiance against chaos, against death, against the entire dying galaxy. But even he was beginning to slow. The battle against Khorne's forces had taken its toll, and his armor bore the dents and scratches of a prolonged fight. He was strong undeniably, but even Astartes had limits, and the warp did not. Wanda felt a surge of raw psychic force slam into her from behind. She gasped, stumbling forward, as she was engulfed in a wave of psychic pressure, so brutal that it physically knocked her to her knees. She clenched her teeth, trying to resist, but the force only intensified. It was not a demon. It was not a creature. It was will, a voice, deep, mocking and ancient, echoed through her mind. "Little witch, you do not belong here." Wanda's eyes widened. The air grew hot around her. The Marine stiffened, sensing the shift in the warp. The voice continued, dripping with malice. "But your power does," Wanda screamed as the pressure mounted. Her magic surged uncontrollably, sparks of hex light exploding around her like miniature stars. She fell to her elbows, fingers clawing the earth as psychic chains wrapped around her mind. The Marine charged toward her. "Witch, fight it, do not submit." Wanda barely heard him. Inside her skull, the voice grew louder, more oppressive. "You have lost worlds. You have lost children. You have lost everything you tried to build." Her breath trembled. Her heart seized. The words hit deeper than any weapon. "Let us take your pain. Let us give you purpose. Let us make you more." Wanda felt tears spill down her cheeks as grief stabbed through her. The warp didn't just attack her. It understood her. It knew exactly which wounds to reopen. It knew how to tempt her, and it was winning. The Marine tackled two demons rushing for her, roaring as he fought to reach her. "Do not listen to them. Do you hear me? They are lies, all lies." But the warp did not lie. It twisted truths. Wanda's hands shook violently. Her magic flickered, unstable and fractured. Her mind, the core of her power, was cracking. And then, through the storm, she heard something else. A whisper, soft, calm, golden, endure. Her breath hitched. It was the Emperor. The psychic chains shattered like glass. Wanda gasped as oxygen rushed back into her lungs. Her vision cleared. The Marine barreled to her side, shielding her with his massive body as demons lunged toward them. Wanda rose to her feet slowly, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. The Marine looked at her. He saw the change instantly. Her grief had not vanished. Her pain had not been erased, but it had transformed. It had become resolve. Wanda inhaled. Her aura ignited. Scarlet light burst from her body like the birth of a star. The demons paused mid-charge. They felt the shift. The Marine stepped back. "By the Emperor," he whispered. "She awakens." Wanda lifted her hands, her voice rising with newfound strength. No more whispers. The battlefield erupted in red. She unleashed a wave of pure hex force that swept across the landscape like a tidal wave. Demons screamed as their bodies unraveled, pulled apart, thread by thread, until nothing remained but drifting ash. The warp itself shuddered, recoiling as if struck. The Marine shielded his visor from the brilliance of her power. When the light finally faded, Wanda was floating above the ground, eyes glowing brighter than ever before. The air around her vibrated. The warp pressed in and she pushed back. The breach sealed. The demons vanished. Silence returned. The Marine stared up at her. "Witch, what are you becoming?" Wanda lowered herself gently, her feet touching the broken stone once more. "I don't know," she whispered, "but this galaxy will not decide it for me." Far above them, beyond mortal sight, the Chaos God stirred. And far away on Terra, the Emperor watched her with growing interest. The aftermath of Wanda's explosion of power hung in the air like the fading echo of a celestial detonation. Dust settled slowly, drawn downward as if even gravity hesitated to disturb the silence. The Marine kept his helm turned toward the horizon, his enhanced sight scanning for renewed movement. But there was none. The warp tier was gone. The demons were gone. The oppressive pressure that had weighed on reality itself had evaporated, leaving a strange stillness behind. It felt like the breath before a scream. Wanda stood among the ruins, still trembling slightly. Her magic circled her like faint embers drifting on invisible currents. The Marine approached her cautiously, as though she were a weapon whose detonation radius was unknown. He was a warrior bred for battle, hardened by centuries of unending war, yet he moved with a reverence he did not extend even to gods. "You sealed the breach," he said quietly. Wanda nodded. "I didn't try to. It just happened." The Marine regarded her with a mixture of awe and worry. Witches of the Imperium do not wield the warp so effortlessly. They fight it, command it in fragments, or die to it. He paused, searching for the right word. "You bent it." Wanda lowered her gaze, troubled. She knew her abilities broke rules, often catastrophically. But here the rules were different. The warp didn't resist her, it reacted to her, responded to her, recognized her, and she didn't know if that was a blessing or a curse. Before she could answer, a deep, thunderous rumble vibrated through the ground. The Marine instantly raised his bolter, turning toward the sound with lethal focus. Wanda felt it too, an immense force approaching, not malevolent but overwhelming in sheer presence. It cut through the planet's battlefield haze like a blade. The Marine exhaled slowly, reinforcements. From behind the jagged horizon came massive shadows towering, armored figures moving in formation. Their silhouettes grew clearer, giants wrapped in ceramite, carrying banners that fluttered with sigils of imperial authority. Behind them strode a golden figure in shimmering psychic armor, surrounded by an escort of custodian guards whose halberds gleamed like captured suns. Wanda felt a ripple of psychic force spread outward, not hostile, not probing, simply vast. This wasn't a mind trying to invade her thoughts. This was a presence so immense that its very existence pressed upon the senses like gravity. The Marine beside her fell to one knee. Wanda remained standing. The golden figure approached until he stood just a few meters from her. His armor was adorned with symbols that radiated power, and the air around him shimmered as though unable to contain the force he carried. His eyes, visible behind a helm crest shaped like a radiant crown, glowed with controlled fire. This was no Astartes, no mortal. This was a psyker whose strength could dwarf continents. He spoke, his voice both gentle and impossible to ignore. "You are the one who tore through the warp's corruption." Wanda didn't answer immediately. She felt as though she were standing before a living sun. "I fought what came through," she said cautiously, "nothing more. And in doing so," he replied, "you closed a wound that our fleets could not mend." The Marine who had fought beside her bowed his head deeply. "Lord Solar, she destroyed a demon horde alone. She may not be of our galaxy, but she has saved countless Imperial lives." Wanda blinked. Lord Solar, she had heard the Marine whisper that title earlier, an Imperial commander whose authority spanned star systems. The Golden Warrior studied her with unsettling clarity. His mind brushed hers, not intrusively but with the precision of a surgeon. She felt him assess her pain, her guilt, her memories, yet he made no effort to take anything from her. Instead, he seemed to simply understand. "You are not bound to the warp," he said. Wanda's breath caught. "I can feel it," she whispered. "I can feel everything in it, but it doesn't control me. That is why the Chaos Gods fear you," the Lord Solar said. "And why the Emperor," his gaze flickered with something like hope, "why he has turned his attention toward you." The words hit her like a silent thunderclap. The Emperor, the being whose presence she had felt during the psychic assault, was watching her, judging her, perhaps even guiding her. Wanda crossed her arms tightly, uneasy. "I'm not here to serve anyone," she said. "Not your Emperor, not your armies. I'm just trying to survive." The Lord Solar nodded slowly. "And yet, survival in the Imperium requires allegiance. If you walk alone, the forces of chaos will hunt you. The Inquisition will seek to contain you, and the warp itself will try to claim you." His voice softened. "But with us, you may find a purpose worthy of your power." Wanda looked away. Purpose. She had chased that word across universes, through grief and destruction and regret, and every time she reached for it, someone else tried to decide it for her. "I've had enough of others choosing my path," she murmured. The Lord Solar extended a hand not in command, but in offering. Wanda hesitated, staring at the gauntlet that gleamed like hammered sunlight. "You wield power that can reshape fate," he said. "But power without direction becomes destruction. Walk with us, Scarlet Witch. Walk with the Imperium, and together we may yet hold back the darkness." The Marine who had fought beside her stood again, turning toward her. His voice was quieter than before, almost human. "I have seen what you can do. This galaxy is dying. We need every weapon we can find, even you." Wanda's pulse quickened. She felt the eyes of thousands, both mortal and demon, upon her. She felt the warp stirring in restless unease. She felt the Emperor's distant light brushing her mind, neither commanding nor pleading, waiting. She reached out slowly and touched the Lord Solar's hand. At that moment, the warp screamed. The Golden Commander stiffened. The Marine snapped his bolter upward. Wanda spun instinctively, sensing a sudden, violent rift tearing open behind them. The air twisted into a burning vortex as a towering figure emerged, massive, horned, armored in brass and drenched in bloodlet fire. A greater demon of Khorne. Its arrival shook the continent. Its roar shattered distant mountains. Its eyes locked onto Wanda with hatred so pure it burned. The Lord Solar shouted, "Fall back." The demon charged. Wanda did not move. She whispered, "I'm done running." Her eyes ignited scarlet. The greater demon of Khorne landed like a cataclysmic hammer, shaking the earth beneath its massive hooves. Its body, a grotesque blend of muscle and brass, radiated raw bloodlust, eyes glowing red hot. It roared with the fury of 100 battlefields. Every instinct within Wanda screamed at her to run, to hide, to flee from this manifestation of pure, murderous chaos. But she had already stood on the edge of despair more times than she could count. Running was no longer an option. "Not here, not now." The Marine flanked her immediately, chainsword roaring, bolter ready. Beside him, the custodian lords and Lord Solar advanced, their steps reverberating across the shattered terrain, banners snapping in a psychic wind. They were power incarnate, moving with divine authority, yet even they knew the weight of what approached was not a foe to be trifled with. This was a demon born from the god of war itself, a creature whose sole purpose was slaughter. Wanda steadied herself, her body glowing with her signature scarlet energy. Her hands quivered, her heart pounded, but her mind sharpened with clarity. She had faced grief. She had faced death. She had faced gods and found herself standing after every impossible strike. And now she would face a god's champion. Alone, she realized she could never match it, but together with these warriors, perhaps she could bend fate itself. The demon charged with terrifying speed, chainaxe raised high, intent on smashing everything in its path. The ground cracked under its strides, buildings toppled, and rocks disintegrated into dust. The custodians met it first, their halberds igniting with golden flame, striking at the demon with the precision of 1,000 lifetimes of combat training. Sparks flew, blood erupted its own, theirs, or that of the earth itself. It was impossible to tell, but the creature did not slow. Its fury was unending. Wanda unleashed a torrent of hex energy, a torrent of red light that tore across the battlefield, warping space as it cut through the demon's form. She expected resistance, expected the creature to shrug off her attacks as so many mortals might, but it did not falter. Instead, it screamed, not in pain but in anger, lashing out with the power of raw bloodlust and warp energy. Her magic flared wildly, struggling to hold cohesion against the overwhelming chaos force. The Marine roared and leapt forward, striking with his chainsword in a flurry of blows, carving deep gashes in the demon's armored hide. Each swing was precise, devastating, and yet, to Wanda, they seemed like pinpricks to a mountain. But she had learned one thing over her life: even mountains could crumble. Focus, persistence, will, and she had that in spades. She closed her eyes and reached deep within herself, drawing not only on her grief, but also on her determination, on every pain and every loss she had ever endured. The red energy around her condensed, forming into brilliant scarlet constructs, barriers, spikes, chains, and tendrils that lashed outward with perfect coordination. The demon's charge collided with this force, staggering, caught momentarily in her weaving of reality. For a brief, shining instant, she controlled the battlefield itself. The custodians capitalized instantly. Golden halberds struck with divine precision, exploiting the momentary weakness in the demon's assault. Sparks erupted, war cries echoed, and even the Marine felt the shift. A rhythm forming, a pattern in chaos. Together they became a force that could challenge the unchallengeable, but then Wanda sensed it, a ripple behind the ripple. Another presence awakening. The warp itself seemed to twist more violently than before, writhing as if in agony. This was not just the demon. This was the god's attention, focused entirely on her. Khorne, the blood god, was aware. He had felt her power, he had seen her defiance, and he was furious. The sky split open, lightning, blood, red and warped, cracked across the horizon. The demon paused, looking upward, and a terrifying realization struck all who watched. More were coming. Not merely followers, not merely soldiers of flesh and blood, but avatars, champions, heralds of war, drawn directly from the blood god's domain. Each one radiated rage, and each step threatened to break the planet itself. Wanda's breath hitched. She was outmatched, outnumbered, yet for the first time in decades she did not feel fear. She felt purpose. She was not here to merely survive. She was here to resist, to fight, to carve meaning into a galaxy that had never known mercy. She turned to the Marine. "We need to hold them together. Every second counts." He nodded, voice grim behind the helm. "Then we will die together if necessary." Wanda shook her head. "No, we will not die, not today, not by their hands." She stepped forward, raising her hands as the scarlet energy coalesced around her like a living storm. She whispered words that were older than her grief, words she barely understood herself, but that resonated with the universe's threads. The air vibrated with unnatural frequency, rocks trembled, the landscape itself bent under her influence. Reality shifted subtly, distorting physics, warping probability. The demons hesitated, their charge slowed. The blood-red storm above faltered, and then she moved, not running, not retreating, forward. The Marine and the custodians followed, striking at the demon with every ounce of power they had. Wanda's constructs struck simultaneously, chains wrapping around limbs, spikes impaling, energy tearing, reality itself bending to hold them in place. The demon roared, fury shaking the sky. Its chain axe lashed at Wanda, but her power turned it aside like water flowing around a rock. She pressed her attack, not with brute force, but with intelligence. Each strike, each wave, each manipulation of space and matter was calculated. She was no longer reacting, she was orchestrating. Then came a moment, fleeting, but eternal in weight. The demon lifted its gaze directly toward her. Its eyes, molten red, reflected a knowledge beyond human comprehension. In that instant, Wanda realized something terrifying. This creature knew her potential. Khorne himself had recognized that she could rival his champions. that she could warp the tide of his endless war. The Marine froze, sensing the shift in energy. She is no longer human, he muttered. No mortal, or even a witch, could wield such control over the warp. Wanda felt it too. The power surged, not just through her, but around her. Probability bent, time slowed, reality shimmered at the edges. And then, with a cry that echoed across the battlefield and into the warp itself, she unleashed her full power. The Scarlet storm erupted like a nova. The demon screamed as reality itself clawed at it, tearing, pulling, disassembling its essence. Flesh, brass, blood, and fury scattered into ribbons of energy. Its roar became a wail, then a whisper, then silence. The battlefield trembled in the aftershock, but Wanda remained, glowing, breathing heavily, every ounce of her soul exhausted yet unbroken. The Marine approached her slowly. "You have changed everything," he said. "Khorne will not forget this day." Wanda, still trembling from exertion, whispered, "Nor will I forget, not ever." In the distance, far beyond mortal sight, the warp shivered, and far away on Terra, the Emperor's gaze lingered. He had seen the storm of crimson power and the defiance against a god. He had seen what the multiverse had brought into his galaxy, and he was intrigued. The battlefield lay in ruins, scarred by psychic storms and the collapse of reality itself. Craters the size of city blocks pocked the land, shattered stone and molten metal scattered across the horizon, and the air hummed with residual energy. Wanda Maximoff floated above the shattered earth, her scarlet aura flickering as if it were alive, as if it sensed every heartbeat, every thought, every shadow of intent around her. The Marine and the custodian forces stood behind her, weapons ready but hesitant. None of them had ever seen a power like hers, and none dared approach too closely, for they understood that the warp itself had woven her existence into something far beyond mortal comprehension. Wanda's mind raced, though not with fear. She was acutely aware of the forces surrounding her. The remnants of Khorne's demons had fled, but the pressure from the warp lingered, as if every god were weighing her potential in the balance. She could feel their curiosity, their hunger, and their rage. Each entity she had faced thus far had underestimated her, and each had paid a terrible price. But these gods were patient. They had witnessed millennia of defiance and destruction, and they would not forget the disruption she represented. Beside her, the Marine lowered his chainsword, studying her with a mixture of awe and concern. "Witch," he said carefully, "you have survived what would break lesser psychers, yet I fear the eyes upon you are only growing sharper. Khorne's wrath will return, and others will follow. Chaos never forgets." Wanda's hands twitched. "I feel them. The whispers have not stopped. Every thought, every desire, every shadow in the warp knows I exist, and they are fascinated, terrified, angry." Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where the sky itself seemed to shimmer unnaturally, waves of psychic energy rippling through the clouds as though reality were being tested for its loyalty. Then the voice came, quiet yet undeniable, not from the warp, not from chaos. "You have awakened, child." Wanda's breath caught. The tone was calm, measured, yet it carried the weight of eons. Her heartbeat slowed as the recognition sank in. It was him, the Emperor. She had felt him once before, fleetingly, during the first clash with Khorne's champion. This time his presence was closer, stronger, reaching into her consciousness like a lighthouse cutting through a storm. "Why am I here?" she whispered. "What does the Emperor want from me? I am not of this galaxy. I am lost. Lost you may feel." The voice replied, resonating in her mind, "But you are necessary. The multiverse trembles under the weight of chaos and grief. Powers beyond reckoning stir at your arrival. You possess a strength not even we have fully measured. That power may shape the fate of a galaxy, or it may destroy it." Wanda's eyes narrowed. "Then you are testing me, in part," the Emperor's voice said. but also guiding. You have faced horrors that would crush the mightiest Astartes. You have stared into the eyes of gods and survived. That is no small feat, and yet... His voice grew distant, echoing as though across star systems. Yet you are alone. The enemies you have awakened will not rest. They will come in numbers beyond your imagining. Wanda's hands glowed brighter. I do not need anyone. I can fight them. The Marine stepped forward, his voice firm, carrying the weight of centuries of devotion. You are not alone, witch. There are forces here prepared to stand with you. If you walk unbound, the galaxy may survive only a short time longer. If you accept guidance, if you stand with us, perhaps you can turn the tide. Wanda studied him for a long moment. She had heard these words before in countless worlds. Pleas, warnings, commands. But this was different. These were not empty platitudes. This was a chance to fight with purpose, to focus her abilities in a universe that demanded absolute power. Her mind flickered with visions of endless battles, of demons clawing their way through the Imperium, of entire worlds reduced to ash and blood. She felt the whispers again, clawing at her sanity. Chaos would not forgive, chaos would not forget. But the Emperor, he offered something rare: perspective, clarity, direction. I will not kneel, she said finally, her voice steady. I will not serve blindly, but I will fight. I will fight alongside those who respect my choice and my power. The Marine nodded slowly. Then you are welcome among us as an ally, not a subject, not a servant, but a force. Wanda allowed herself a breath. Her hands dimmed slightly, though the scarlet aura lingered, still alive with energy. The custodians and Lord Solar adjusted their stance, understanding that her decision marked a turning point. The battlefield had been chaos incarnate, yet in her acceptance of this fragile alliance, a new order began to take shape, fragile, tentative, yet filled with immense potential. Far beyond the battlefield, the warp stirred. The blood god had felt her defiance. Tease Inch had taken note. Nurgle seethed with impatience, and Slaanesh whispered promises of power and temptation. None of them had forgotten her. None would forgive her, but for the first time, Wanda Maximoff understood that she did not need to fear them, not completely. She had survived universes, she had bent reality, and now she was learning to wield her power with purpose in a galaxy that had never known a witch like her. The golden figure, Lord Solar, stepped forward and extended a hand. We march to hold the line against the horrors that pursue you. Stand with us, witch. Stand with the Imperium. Your choice will shape the destiny of countless souls. Wanda placed her hand in his, and in that instant, the air around them shifted. The scarlet aura expanded outward, interacting with the psychic resonance of the custodians, the Marine, and Lord Solar himself. It was not merely a shield. It was a signal to the universe that a new force had entered the war, a being capable of challenging gods and defying destiny itself. As the sun, or what passed for it in the scarred sky of Cadia Secundus, broke through the psychic storm, Wanda realized something profound. She was no longer merely a survivor of grief and loss. She was a catalyst, a nexus of power that could either save or doom this galaxy. And the choices she would make from this moment onward would reverberate across worlds, across the warp, across the minds of gods themselves. The battlefield quieted for a fleeting moment, the calm before the storm. Demons had been repelled, but they would return, drawn by her presence and the sheer scale of her power. The Imperium would notice her arrival, and the Inquisitors would question her motives. Chaos would strategize, and the galaxy would tremble. Yet amidst the chaos, one truth remained. Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, had arrived, and she would not be ignored. And far beyond on Terra, the Emperor observed in silence, measuring, calculating, and considering. He saw potential. He saw danger. He saw a power unmatched in his long reign, and somewhere in the depths of that calculation, he decided that this witch, this anomaly, was worth watching. The war for her soul, for the fate of Cadia, and for the balance of the galaxy had only just begun. The remnants of the battlefield lay in eerie silence, broken only by the faint hum of residual warp energy that clung to the ruined terrain like a living shroud. Wanda Maximoff stood amid the ruins, her eyes glowing faintly red, scarlet energy dancing along her fingertips in restless arcs. Her mind was still spinning from the clash with the greater demon of Khorne, a being of pure violence and rage, yet she felt no fear, only resolve. Every battle she had ever fought, Sokovia, Westview, countless memories of loss and destruction, had prepared her for this singular truth. She was no longer merely a survivor. She was an agent of change, a force capable of bending the universe to her will if she chose. The Marine beside her, battered but unbowed, scanned the horizon. His bolter was primed, chainsword at the ready, but his eyes, behind the glowing visor, betrayed the same awe that rippled through the custodians and Lord Solar. He had witnessed the impossible, the Scarlet, which rewriting reality itself, repelling the champion of Khorne, surviving an assault that would have annihilated even the strongest psychers. And yet he knew this was only the beginning. From the east the sky darkened again, but this time not with the smoke of battle or debris. Waves of psychic disturbance rolled across the land like invisible tidal waves, subtle at first, then rising into violent surges. The warp itself seemed to shift, twisting and writhing with an awareness that was both intelligent and malevolent. Wanda felt the pull immediately, a tugging at the edges of her consciousness as if something far older, far greater than any demon or mortal, was reaching for her. "They are coming," the Marine muttered, his voice low, almost reverent. "More. Not just demons this time, avatars, champions, lords of war. All drawn to your presence. Chaos has sensed you." Wanda's hands balled into fists. "They can try. I will not submit." Her voice was calm, measured, yet carried the weight of unshakable defiance. She could feel the pressure of the warp pressing against her, each ripple whispering promises of power, temptation, and ruin. She had felt this before, when the Chaos Gods first noticed her. But now, the intensity was magnified 1,000-fold. Every god was aware, every god was intrigued, and every god was hungry. And yet, for the first time in her multiverse, spanning existence, she did not feel powerless. She had learned that grief, loss, and fury could be weaponized not just against mortals, but against entities that existed beyond mortal comprehension. Her aura expanded, the scarlet light glowing brighter than ever, a storm contained in human form. The air shimmered around her as reality bent subtly to her will, bending probabilities, twisting physics, and warping gravity in her favor. The first of the approaching forces became visible, a formation of Khorne's elite berserkers, moving like predators across the scarred terrain. Their armor was etched with runes of blood and fire, each strike of their weapons capable of tearing men apart, as though they were nothing more than straw. Behind them, other figures emerged, grotesque forms shaped in the image of nightmares, some monstrous, some humanoid, each radiating a psychic weight that threatened to fracture the minds of mortals. Within miles, Lord Solar stepped beside Wanda, halberd gleaming like a captured sun. "They will not relent. Khorne will send everything at us. This galaxy does not tolerate defiance." His voice was steady, commanding, yet carried the faintest trace of awe. "But together we can withstand it." Wanda turned to him, a faint smile ghosting across her lips. "Then we fight together, not as servants, not as pawns, but as equals." The custodians formed a line beside them, golden halberds raised, their discipline absolute. The Marine assumed his position at her flank, bolter primed. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Even the ground beneath their feet pulsed with tension, aware that the next moments could shift the balance of life and death across entire star systems. Then, with a sound like the tearing of reality itself, the first wave hit. Berserkers charged, engines of bloodlust and fury, axes raised high. Wanda reacted instantly, her hands weaving a lattice of scarlet energy, twisting space to catch them in invisible chains, hurling some backward, tearing others apart mid-stride. Probability bent to her will. Fate itself seemed to falter in her presence. Lord Solar advanced with her, cutting down berserkers with divine precision. Custodians fell upon the creatures, striking with preternatural speed and coordination, their halberds igniting with psychic fire that burned through both flesh and metal. The Marine roared, charging into the thick of battle, chainsword cleaving through monstrous forms with terrifying efficiency. And yet, for every foe they felled, more emerged. The warp trembled above, and Wanda felt the unmistakable tug of something far greater. An intelligence shaping the tides of battle, testing her, probing her limits. It was subtle at first, a whisper beneath the roar of war, then more insistent. A figure appeared amidst the psychic storm, larger than life, a champion not entirely corporeal, moving with a speed and grace that defied physics. Its eyes burned with the hatred of centuries, its very being a testament to Khorne's fury. Wanda's breath hitched. She had faced champions before, monsters more terrifying than mortal minds could comprehend, but this was different. It was as if the god himself had sent his will incarnate to test her resolve. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to hide, to surrender to the sheer force of inevitability. But she did not know. She whispered, eyes blazing, "Not this time, not ever." Her aura flared violently, the scarlet storm expanding outward, ripping the air and reality itself. Probability fractured beneath her will, twisting the battlefield into impossible shapes. The demon lunged, and she met it head on, raising her hands to bend reality into a cage that ensnared its limbs, pulling it off balance. Lord Solar and the custodians struck simultaneously, precision incarnate. The Marine cleaved through a secondary wave of berserkers, moving with lethal grace despite the chaos surrounding him. The clash erupted into a maelstrom of psychic power, godlike fury, and sheer mortal determination. Time itself seemed to shiver, bending to the Scarlet Witch's will. The warp screamed in frustration. Khorne's champion roared in fury, and Wanda, standing at the center of the storm, realized with grim clarity this was only the beginning. The galaxy had never seen a witch like her. Chaos had never faced a force like her. Mile of plea simpl thing. If I learn even a little today. The battlefield was unrecognizable. Planets crumbled in distant systems, psychic storms tore through the warp like raging hurricanes, and the screams of the dying echoed across space itself. Wanda Maximoff stood at the heart of it all, her scarlet aura a storm of power so immense that reality itself trembled. She was no longer merely a witch, no longer merely a mortal capable of bending probability. She had become a fulcrum upon which the fate of entire galaxies rested. The Chaos Gods had awakened fully. Khorne's armies surged, fueled by bloodlust, roaring with a fury that could shatter mountains. His manipulations twisted probabilities into impossible knots, sending demon, priests, and sorcerers across the material plane to challenge her intellect and skill. Nurgle's rot and decay spread like a living disease, consuming entire cities in moments. And Slaanesh, whispering promises of power, pleasure, and excess, sought to tempt her, to break her mind with visions of everything she desired and feared. Each god had sent their champions, avatars of their will, to strike, to corrupt, to annihilate. Yet Wanda did not flinch. She raised her hands, and the very fabric of reality bent in response. Probabilities twisted into her command. The flow of energy in the universe was no longer random, but orchestrated by her intent. She drew upon her grief, her rage, her love, her loss, and transformed it into a force beyond comprehension. She was the storm, and all else was wind and ash. Lord Solar and the custodians fought beside her, forming shields of golden energy, striking with precision that bordered on divine. The Marine, bloodied but unbroken, carved a path through Khorne's elite, each swing of his chainsword echoing with mortal defiance. Yet even their combined might paled beside the scale of the warp itself, bending, pressing, and twisting, as though the universe itself sought to test her resolve. And then, in the center of the psychic maelstrom, she saw him, the Emperor, not physically, not as a mere observer, but as a presence so immense that the universe seemed to pause in reverence. His gaze penetrated her very soul, measuring, judging, and acknowledging her. He did not command, did not demand, but offered clarity. A single truth crystallized in her mind. She was no longer a pawn. She was a force of her own making, a fulcrum upon which the fates of gods and mortals alike would pivot. With a voice that shook the stars themselves, Wanda unleashed her full power. Scarlet energy expanded outward, a tornado of raw reality, warping force. Time bent, space fractured, and the laws of physics became threads she could twist at will. Champions of Khorne were torn asunder, their roars reduced to whispers. Inch's schemers found their probabilities unmade, their plots unraveling in impossible ways. Nurgle's plagues withered and fell into nothingness. And Slaanesh recoiled, unable to corrupt a mind so resolute and so pure in its defiance. The chaos gods themselves stirred, furious yet restrained. They understood that this mortal, this witch from another universe, was not merely powerful. She was an anomaly, a convergence of fate and will so unique that they could not destroy her without risking the unraveling of their own plans. For the first time in eons, the gods of chaos felt caution. Wanda descended slowly, her aura blazing brighter than any sun. The battlefield, once a sea of carnage and ruin, began to settle. The forces of the Imperium, rallied by Lord Solar and the custodians, began to take ground. The Marine stood at her side, battered but resolute, recognizing that they had witnessed history itself, the moment when one being turned the tide against gods. And then she spoke, not to the armies, not to the demons, not even to the Emperor. She spoke to herself, to the universe, to the countless worlds that hung in the balance. I am not yours. I am not theirs. I am myself, and I will decide the fate of this galaxy, not chaos, not the Emperor, not fate itself. Her words resonated across the warp, across space and time, reaching into the minds of gods, mortals, and demons alike. The universe paused to listen, and in that silence, a new reality was forged. The chaos gods retreated, not in defeat, but in cautious acknowledgement. They would return, they always returned, but Wanda had proven something unprecedented. Even gods could be resisted. Even fate could be challenged. Lord Solar stepped forward. What now? The galaxy? Wanda's eyes glimmered with quiet fire. Now we rebuild, we prepare, we endure, and we fight because this galaxy is worth saving. The Marine nodded. Then we stand together, no retreat, no surrender, and high above, unseen yet ever, present, the Emperor watched. Not with command, not with judgment, but with a spark of recognition. In Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, he had glimpsed something unique, something terrifying, and something magnificent. A force that could shape reality, defy gods, and challenge the very nature of the multiverse. The war was not over. Chaos would return. The Imperium would demand her allegiance, her power, her obedience. The the universe would tremble at her presence for eons to come. But Wanda Maximoff smiled. She was ready, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The end.